It was a quiet Saturday morning in Broadview, Illinois. The sun had just started rising over the rows of brick buildings, and the street in front of the IC detention facility was already lined with protest signs. People were chanting, holding banners that read, "Families belong together and stop the raids." Among them was Pastor Miguel Rivera, a local faith leader known for his calm spirit and dedication to helping immigrant families. For years, he had led food drives, vigils, and prayer walks outside the same ICE building. That morning, he didn't come as a protester. He came as a peacemaker. But within hours, Broadview would become the center of national attention. And Pastor Rivera would end up on the ground, bleeding from his head, after being struck by a pepper ball fired by an ICE agent.
After they shot me in my head and my face and multiple times in my torso, arms, and legs, I was shielded by the bodies of others who were there, who rushed in to support me and took many more hits that were intended for me. Within 2 minutes, quite a number of ICE officers, maybe 15, maybe 20, rushed out of the gate and began to shove us down, and I was already disabled on the ground but attempted to get away. And they continued to shove us in a kettling maneuver towards a place where we would not be able to escape. And you can see in that video ICE officers shoving protesters who were standing and speaking and chanting and singing peacefully and praying peacefully, shoving us down and then dispensing a huge amount of chemical weapons onto us. We could hear them laughing as they were shooting us from the roof, and it was deeply disturbing. We've gotten to witness a few things about these ICE agents operating in Broadview, and really what it has shown us is how disorganized they are and how poorly supervised and trained they are. We've also heard ICE agents talking to each other, one of whom said, "Man, I don't even remember why I'm here anymore," and the other said, "I don't know either." So there's a deep demoralization that we are seeing as we're bringing this peaceful and spiritual protest against their tactics and what they are doing to our city and our communities and our neighbors.
The protest began peacefully. Witnesses say there were nearly 150 people, a mix of church members, immigrant rights activists, and community volunteers. They prayed, sang songs, and handed out water to each other. Some even knelt in front of the building reciting scripture.
These leaders in these local cities, along with Pritzker and Johnson, ignore what's going on, or, sir, they're helping Antifa cover it up?
I think actually they're petrified. You know, their families live there, everything else. I actually think they're scared. Pritzker was a failure in his family. They threw him out of the family business. The guy's a loser. But you know what? I believe they're scared. They're actually frightened for their lives.
This is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged, he's insecure, he's a wannabe dictator, and there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me, so come and get me.
But the mood shifted when ICE vans began to arrive. Protesters moved closer to the gate, chanting louder. Officers ordered them to step back. Cameras started rolling. People sensed something was about to happen. Then, according to eyewitness accounts, one protester shouted that officers were moving in. Within moments, the situation spiraled out of control. Officers in riot gear advanced toward the crowd. Pepper balls were fired into the air. The sound of rubber rounds echoed across the street. People screamed. Chaos unfolded. In the middle of that storm, Pastor Rivera was standing beside a group of elderly women who refused to leave the sidewalk. He raised his hands, asking the officers to stop. Seconds later, a pepper ball struck him directly on the forehead. The impact knocked him backward. He fell to the pavement, blood running down his face. People rushed to help, shouting for medics. Someone screamed, "He's a pastor. He's not doing anything." Cell phones captured every second. Within minutes, the footage hit social media. The video spread faster than anyone expected. On TikTok, clips of the pastor's fall got millions of views within hours. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like Broadview protest and ICE accountability started trending. Comments poured in from across the country. Some were angry. How could they shoot a pastor? Others defended ICE, saying the agents were just following orders to disperse the crowd. But one thing was clear. The images were powerful. They showed a moment that no one could easily explain away. A man of peace becoming a victim of violence. In interviews later, Witnesses described the pastor as calm, even moments before the chaos began. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening anyone, one woman said. He was just standing there with his Bible. Another video from a different angle appeared the next day, showing the pepper ball hitting him after a line of protesters had already started backing up. That clip fueled even more outrage. The church community called it a targeted act of intimidation. ICE, in its statement, said the use of non-lethal deterrence was authorized due to aggressive crowd behavior. But the footage told a different story. By the next morning, the site outside the Broadview ICE facility was covered with flowers, candles, and handmade signs. One read, "Faith shouldn't be a crime." Another said, "You shot a pastor, but not our faith." Community leaders gathered again, this time in silence. They prayed for Pastor Rivera, who was recovering at a local hospital. Doctors said he was lucky. The impact could have been deadly, but the larger wound, the one to Chicago's trust, was far deeper. Across the city, people debated what this meant. Was ICE using excessive force? Were peaceful protests being silenced? Or was this just another clash in a city already stretched thin by fear and frustration? In neighborhoods from Pilsen to Little Village, immigrants whispered about what happened. Parents told their children to stay away from protests. Church groups organized safety workshops. Lawyers began drafting complaints. And through it all, the question remained: what will it take for federal agencies to listen? A few days later, Pastor Rivera released a short video message from his hospital bed, his face still bruised, a small bandage on his temple. He spoke slowly, voice trembling, but his words carried weight. "They hit me because I was standing for peace. They hit me because I refused to be silent. But we are not afraid. We are faithful. And we will return again and again until justice comes." That clip became the heartbeat of a movement. Protesters returned to Broadview the next weekend, twice as many this time. No longer just immigrants or church members. Now teachers, union workers, and students joined them. They carried large photos of the pastor. Some held mock pepper balls with messages like, "You can't shoot faith." The line between protest and prayer blurred. People knelt on the asphalt, reciting hymns while police watched silently. News crews arrived. Major outlets began covering the story. Politicians tweeted statements. Calls for an investigation grew louder. Behind the scenes, city officials faced mounting pressure. The mayor's office promised a review of the incident. Faith leaders demanded accountability, asking why federal agents were using force against unarmed citizens. ICE responded with a brief statement. "Our officers acted in accordance with policy and training. The incident is under internal review," but no apology came. Weeks later, Chicago's churches organized a massive march downtown, called Faith Over Fear. Thousands gathered, candles in hand, walking from Union Park to the Federal Plaza. At the front was Pastor Rivera, walking slowly, still recovering but determined. The crowd erupted when he raised his hand and said, "They thought this would silence us. Instead, it woke us up." The moment was electric. That march became a symbol, not just of protest, but of resilience. It showed how a single act of violence could ignite a wave of unity. From that day, murals appeared across the city. One near Pilsen showed a man with a bandaged head holding a Bible, surrounded by the words, "Stand for Peace." Students painted messages on sidewalks. Musicians wrote songs. Local news covered the art as much as the protest itself. What started as tragedy had become transformation. For many Chicagoans, the story of the pastor wasn't just about ICE or immigration. It was about something bigger, about what kind of city Chicago wants to be. A city that fears authority, or a city that stands together. A city that silences voices, or a city that listens. In his final speech at a prayer service weeks later, Pastor Rivera summed it up best. "We are not fighting agents. We are fighting fear. And as long as faith stands, fear will fall." The crowd erupted in applause. People cried. And for a moment, Broadview, the site of chaos and pain, became a place of hope. Because even when a pastor was shot, the spirit of Chicago refused to die.